You are listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
This network is supported by our listeners. You can become a supporting member by going to arcpodnet.com/members and signing up. As a supporting member, you have access to high-quality downloads of each show and a discount at our future online store, and access to show hosts on a members-only Slack team. For professional members, we'll have training shows and other special content offered throughout the year. Once again, go to arcpodnet.com/members to support the network and get some great extras and swag in the process. That's arcpodnet.com/members.
Hello and welcome to the CRM Archaeology Podcast, episode 114 for July 5th, 2017. I'm your host, Chris Webster. On today's show, we find out about the Heritage Resource Management Masters at Simon Fraser University. So dust off your passport because the CRM Archaeology Podcast starts right now. Hey everyone, Chris Webster here. Before we start the show, I just wanted to mention we had a pretty severe Skype lag going on for this whole show. So some of the stuff cut out just a little bit, but I've tried to cut it together and make sure you didn't miss anything important. So bear with that. Otherwise, it sounds really good, and there's some great information in this episode, and we're really proud of it. So go check out the links and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the show, everyone. Joining me today are Bill in, Washington State right now.
Yep. Good morning.
And Doug in Scotland.
Yeah.
All right, so today we have a special guest on, John Welch from Simon Fraser University, and we're going to talk about the Heritage Resource Management program we got up there. But first off, hey John, how's it going?
Having a good day so far. Thanks
Excellent.
for having me on.
Outstanding. So why don't you tell us first just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into the program.
Yeah, great. I'm an archaeologist and work, as you said, at Simon Fraser University, a professor there in the School of Resource and Environmental Management and also in the Department of Archaeology. And I've been there for about 12 years now, moved there having worked as the Historic Preservation Officer and archaeologist for the White Mountain Apache Tribe, and then did stints also with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Bureau of Land Management in Arizona.
Awesome. So you were working in what we call in the United States cultural resource management, but up there, is it generally just called heritage resource management? You do that instead, or is that just what your program is called?
Yeah, people call it all kinds of different stuff up here, but in British Columbia, it's called the Heritage Primary piece of legislation that we deal with. Okay. And so, HRM is a good label for it.
Okay. Excellent. Well, let's talk about that. So I was put together with you by a mutual colleague, and because he said your program up there is really good. He's actually writing some programs, a course for your program. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Heritage Resource Management Master's program up there? Length, things like that, and I'm sure we'll have lots of questions as you get into that.
Well, we got it in our heads some years ago that we needed to do more to bridge the gap between academic and CRM archaeology. Mm-hmm. And, it's been a topic of conversation in archaeology for lots of years, and especially like the notion that the academy needed to do more to prepare, participants and staff in CRM. And as we looked around, we realized that it was an especially acute issue in British Columbia, where advanced degrees are really not required to be full practitioners. And so you have lots of excellent archaeologists doing a lot of excellent archaeology without research degrees. Mm-hmm. And that's not often a liability, but it can be, as CRM grows and sort of diversifies, you want to have some safeguards built into it, and you want to make sure that people understand that a core principle or aspect of doing CRM is creating knowledge. And so scanning the environment and thinking about what we might do at the time kind of converged with advances in online and distance learning, and with an interest in the part of the province of BC and the university in creating professional programs. And so we sort of leaped into that, built this program, 4 courses, all of them delivered online after an initial face-to-face orientation session on campus. The students take a law and policy course with me, an ethics and professional practice course with George Nicholas, and then business management with Chris Dorr, and then research design and methods with Dave Maxwell. And so it's set up in a traditional sort of term environment with 2 courses in the fall, 2 courses in the spring. And then the students are candidates and they write master's theses with a supervisor, another member of the ACE faculty here at SFU, and have as a result the standard academic degree, but one that's grounded in the practicalities and professional demands of CRM.
So this is a 1-year program, just 2 semesters? Is that what I'm hearing right?
The coursework is 1 year.
Okay.
We want the students, of course, to finish their theses as swiftly as suits them. And we have time limits on that in order to provide those incentives. We're just the first offering of the courses. And so the students are now exploring what it's like to be independently charged with conducting their thesis research.
Okay.
And so we'll see how that goes. It's a little early to say for sure, but we have built into the program some pretty explicit sets of milestones and a bunch of other support and guidance for the students as they undertake their thesis projects.
Okay. So I want to step back just a hair here and talk about the fact that graduate degrees aren't necessarily required in British Columbia, for all positions. That's kind of true down here in the United States for some positions as well. Kind of up to the company in some cases, unless they have to meet Secretary of the Interior standards for some reason because of an agency they're working with, or because it is an agency. And then even here in Nevada, to get permitted as an archaeologist, even a principal investigator archaeologist, you can still get around the graduate degree recommendation by having experience. Compensate for that, which, experience, they don't really look at the quality of the experience. They just look at the number of months you have doing a thing and just assume that if you did this thing, then you have the experience. But we all know that's not necessarily true. I think a graduate degree, if done properly, is still a good thing to have if the education you get with that graduate degree is appropriate to what you're trying to do and not just a check in the block and a piece of paper. I don't know. We've interviewed other people before on this program about doing different things. So so we have a lot of questions, I'm sure, for you. But regarding the course, I'm interested in the fact that the coursework really doesn't seem super extensive, which can be good because sometimes people want to get in, learn exactly what they need to know, and then get out and get back into the workforce, which is fantastic. So how long do you give people to work on their theses? Are they expected to be working on that while they're doing some of the coursework, or do they just wait until they're done with that and then they have a year or two or however long, a couple semesters to do a thesis? And then while you're talking about the thesis, is this the kind of thing where they can bring in, say, a data set, or is it start to finish, let's find a project, let's get funding, let's do the work, let's write the report, and let's be done with it?
Well, we actually are getting students thinking about their theses during the application stages.
Mm-hmm.
We want
That's probably
them
good.
to outline. We want them to outline and start thinking about what an independent research project is going to look like as part of their application, because it is, if there is an Achilles heel for this program, it's in the thesis. And the fact that, with online coursework and students not on campus or even in the neighborhood necessarily, the opportunities for close and sustained interaction with the faculty member are more limited. And so those have to be cultivated deliberately, and more thought has to go into planning the thesis early on. So we actually have an exercise as part of the orientation program, which is 3 days on campus in the first part of the, and do peer review of one another's thesis projects. And then we have meetings between the faculty supervisors and the students during that orientation. And then we have the requirement for completing the preparation of a thesis prospectus in the first term of the coursework, and the completing of a full proposal for the thesis in the second term of coursework. And so it's all built in. Plus there's online resources to guide students in the completion of that prospectus and that proposal. And I think it's important to keep in mind for this particular program that our audience isn't folks right out of undergraduate. We are looking for folks with a couple of years of experience already under their belt. My opinion, and I'd be happy to be disagreed with, is that you can't actually teach people how to be archaeologists in the classroom.
Yeah.
That really only occurs in project contexts, whether they be CRM or field schools. If you take a student, or you take, maybe a junior colleague is a better term for it, that has those couple of years of experience, and they're ready to make a commitment to a career in CRM, then we're ready to step in and provide for that professionalization, to give them a deeper understanding of those 4 key dimensions of CRM: the law and policy, ethics and practice, business management, and research design, and those as being the things that everybody really needs to know if they're going to be a leader in the field. And those are things that can, of course, be acquired through experience, but there's also ways to accelerate, to broaden, and to diversify that training in ways that I think add value in lots of different, aspects of the field.
I know you said you guys set up the program a little while ago. How long has the program been running?
Our first cohort was the fall of 2016. So we just got through the first 2 terms of the coursework with 11 candidates.
And have you guys, this being a brand new program and stuff, have you found stuff that you may change in the future, or things that you're going to adapt to the program moving forward?
We actually just did a curriculum review with all of the instructors last week, because we hadn't had it's another one of these online and distance education things where nobody's ever in the same room at the same time. And so you miss an opportunity to really kind of get down and, figure out what's really going on with it. And so we sat down for 2 days and compared notes about the ways that things had gone. We looked at all the feedback from the students. We solicited additional feedback from the students for stuff for us to kind of workshop during it. And the answer is yes. We see a bunch of opportunities for improving the connectivity and the integration among places where there was some unnecessary overlap that's going to be excluded from the courses. And we found places where there's overlap, but it looked like it was really productive overlap, that it actually was, a different take on the same range of issues. And there was some complementary going on. So we're going to try to optimize some of that and do more with it. And then we got a longer range plan of creating a single project case study that we would use the courses in order to workshop and explore those 4 dimensions of CRM in that individual case study. So we're trying to identify from now a range of alternatives what the best case study to use is and how we would go about doing that. So assuming we continue to be successful, then we're going to make a transition in the coursework to that case study approach.
So we probably have a pretty diverse audience listening to this podcast, and there's probably some people who would be interested in creating their own course similar to this. Would you have any sort of advice based off of your first year of experience that you'd pass on to people if they're considering making a course like this?
There's situations at the different universities and the places where these courses develop are all pretty different in a lot of ways. And so I think what you got to do is you got to identify what the comparative advantages are. We're in a marketplace for students. And of course, we like to believe that we're adding value and not doing this in order to make money. But one way or another, I sell master's degrees, a coursework only certificate option for our program. But the master's degree is what I think is becoming the minimum full professional credential for doing research archaeology. It's, signaled as that being the case in the Register of Professional Archaeologists requirements, and in, a growing number of international contexts as well, Doug. And so to my way of thinking, you have to look at the market as well as what your university can provide and find a way to bridge into it. And for us in archaeology at SFU, we wanted to capitalize on the fact that we've got, serious bench strength in archaeology. It's an archaeology standalone program, separate from sociology and anthropology. We don't have to wrangle with colleagues about distribution requirements for linguistics and physical anthropology. So we can, forge our own way there. Our SFU is also set up with good support for distance and online education. So we wanted to, maximize the benefits that come out of that. And SFU, I think one of the other comparative advantages for us is that we are a fully accredited in the US Canadian university, close to the US border, tied in with a lot of CRM networks across the Northwest, try to bridge into the, bigger North American market for students. I don't think any of us were under the illusions that we could sustain this program with only Canadian students and candidates coming through it. And so with that in mind, we've also tried to really keep a focus on Canadian as well as American law and policy and ethics and practice and elements of business management and research design the way it's been done. And at the same time, keep suggesting to students that there is a growing international market and demand for the kinds of services that they'll be able to provide as a result of going through this program.
What you mentioned, you guys are accredited in the United States. You have like regional accreditation or national? What kind of accreditation do you guys have?
Exactly. There's a bunch of different accreditation programs for universities in the U.S. And so we're tapped into the one that accredits the northwestern sector of the U.S. And so like SFU is also the only, well, I don't know if it's the only Canadian university, but we compete in SA and NCAA athletics also through SFU.
All right. Well, I think we're close enough to a break before we get into any other really long questions. So let's take that break. And if all went well, you guys will be listening to a promo that we're going to be running all month from SFU about this program. So you can try to get your applications in before they close this year. And we'll talk about that before the end, like what you have to do to get in if you want to start this fall with SFU, because you still can. So, but we'll talk about that in one of the next segments. And for now, let's take a break and we'll be back in 30 seconds. Hey everyone, here's a new program from Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, BC. SFU Archaeology's professional HRM graduate program exists to train the next generation of leaders in the diverse and dynamic CRM industry. Taught by and for CRM professionals, each of their 4 online courses delves into a key dimension of CRM: law and policy, ethics and practice, business management, and research design and methods. The MA thesis requirements meet RPA standards and your interest in unlimited career advancement. Check them out online at SFU HRM Archaeology. Spots are filling up for next fall's cohort, so apply today. All right, welcome back. This program sounds incredibly interesting. We have a bunch more questions to ask regarding what we need to know to get this thing going and what we're going to learn when we do it. So, Bill, why don't you take us through segment 2?
Yeah, first I want to say I looked at the program, just now when I was online listening to the first segment, and the curriculum looks like it's point on with what everybody's been telling me for years that we need to teach in university. So it seems like, with this being the first year, that the ball is rolling. I think, more universities are realizing this is the kind of stuff that students want to learn. First, I wanted to know, did you after any other program, or was this just something that you guys thought up on your own?
We thought it was time to come up with something totally new and different. We wanted a purpose-built program. We didn't really want to create follow any models, because it wasn't clear to us how those were really going to serve our interests in that particular segment of, the CRM world. Like, we wanted to have a place for practitioners with bachelor's degrees to come to finish their formal training. And we wanted that to be very clearly something that was going to add value kind of for every step of the way for them. Like, we didn't want to, set up any introductory archaeological training in it. We wanted to be able to vault right through that and recognize applicants coming into the program as being colleagues, because they are. They've got stuff to offer as well. And the best teaching that goes on in lots of these courses is when the students start sharing their experiences with the different contexts, especially across the Canadian-U.S. border. That's been super fruitful.
So you've been able to get past a lot of that intro stuff, because I did look and it looked like it was, pretty bare bones. And I even looked at the amount of credits that a PhD in anthropology needs at Simon Fraser, and it's like 30% less than what I had to do as a PhD student at Arizona. So it does look like, maybe that's your university's structure, or maybe the credits are allocated differently, but it does look like students kind of either focus a few of them at a time, or they really don't have to take a bunch of background stuff. They just have to go right into their degree. So you were saying this is a standalone, it's a standalone program in archaeology that didn't really follow any other rules. With this trend picking up, where there's a problem with standardization, like we see with traditional anthro programs, where students will go to one school and they'll be really well equipped for the field, and then students with the same master's from another school don't know anything, but they know a lot about the archaeology of the Arctic. I mean, do you see where maybe doing your own thing is? Do you think that there will be a time when there will be an agreement on the courses and the content that several universities follow, so that we can get students that actually have these skills that can work anywhere on the continent?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I think that that's a place where maybe RPA or, some other accrediting organization might step in at some point. And there are sort of recommended curricula that have come out of the CRM world for universities to consider. But those all start off with the idea of kind of a tabula rasa archaeology and doing field work or project management or any of that stuff. Even just kind of the basics of how the CRM world works. And we just decided not to try to attempt to do that in the classroom. Part of it is, and Doug may want to speak to this, is, SFU, like lots of other institutionally grounded in a British model, where you come in and you are identified and teamed up with an individual professor for graduate training. And it's in that relationship with the professor that you determine what you need to learn, what courses you might want to take, in addition to a basic course in research design and in archaeological theory, which are the two required courses for our master's and PhD programs at SFU. And so from there, it's all about what else you need to do. But more importantly, it's about how you're going to advance that individual independent research project. And so we wanted to kind of split the difference, give students more than just, two courses in research design and theory, and have those be, major, substantial learning experiences. The 5-hour format of our online courses are keeping students pretty busy through their weeks of training. So we wanted to kind of bridge that, split the difference, and see whether or not we could come up with something that would really be effective for people that had a chance to participate as CRM, field techs or, junior level project directors, and knew they wanted to get to the next level, wanted to eliminate any impediments to jurisdictional access and eliminate impediments, of course, to career advancement.
About the students you guys have got in your sort of first couple of years, I noticed you said, it's meant for people that have been at least doing work for at least a year. What's sort of the range of the students and their experiences and actually their locations have you received so far?
Yeah, that's another good question. So what we've got in our first year cohort is a pretty big spread. We've got some folks that have been in the business for 20 or even 25 years with operating very effectively as project directors, or even in one instance is basically the owner of a company with a bachelor's degree by way of formal training. And then we've got a couple of candidates with just a couple of years of experience, mostly in the field technician level, but have started writing report segments and demonstrated some proficiencies there and some interest in doing more and learning more. And so pretty big spread. Got 2 of the 11 students in the program are US based, and the other 9 are Canadians, going all the way from Ontario across the prairie provinces, a couple from Alberta, and the rest of them are BC locals.
And with that spread of, I mean, essentially someone from an owner down to, people, how have you found that that's worked out in the sort of, I assume you have some sort of online ability to, is there some sort of forum or, I imagine you do some sort of video chat of some sort. How have the different range of experiences meshed together, and has it benefited everyone across the whole range?
I think the short answer to that is yes. It has been good for all of the students to have that spread in there. We actually anticipated some of this because, if you're going to set up a cohort program, it wasn't clear to us how you could do that without having folks have a chance to get to know each other face to face. And so that's why we opted for this 3-day on-campus intensive orientation and introduction to one another and to the program. And, I think we did a pretty good job with it. Like, we combined social events and, field trips and, these peer review programs for the thesis prospectuses and other opportunities to kind of problem solve together and to deliberate together. And that translated really easily into the coursework scenarios. And so for the fall and for the spring coursework, we also have a real-time live virtual meeting set up, not for each course, but just for each term. And so you do that on a weekly basis, and the students get together, talk about the issues and concerns. I talk a little bit about what's going on with the thesis research, or just shoot it, whatever's going on in their worlds and in their jobs. And that, I think, also kind of holds the cohort together and makes it so that the communications flow a little bit more easily than they do in a strictly regimented online or distance learning environment.
That brings up another interesting issue with such a range. Well, first off, let me ask a question I had from before. What are your entrance requirements? Like, what do you look for in an applicant? If you guys, best of all worlds, and you guys got 100 applications this semester, and you could only take 5, what are you specifically looking for this program?
If we had that 100 applications, what I would be looking for, number one, I'd be ecstatic, and number two, what I'd be looking for is folks that had really thought through what they wanted to do with their thesis.
Okay,
and that's because, fundamentally, what's going to make or break this program is people being able to get through it and feel good about it, and not like they got put through the ringers or, had, a bunch of other layers of requirements imposed on them as they tried to get through their theses. And the fastest way that happens, in my experience, is when a student knows what they want to do and gets busy trying to do it. And it's, a reasonable and a good thing to do. And so for that, and you can actually check out what the students are doing, on the website for the program. This goes back to an earlier question as well, is that the students are bringing in to the program and into the thesis, not only the topics and the data that they want to use, but they're bringing in the colleagues from the places where they either are working currently or the places where they want to work in the future. So we're encouraging them to envision their future career and to build a thesis that provides the introduction into that research domain. That
leads into the question I intended to ask right before that, is about business. We talked about this a little bit in segment 1, but the a lot of times, especially down here in the States, I'm sure it's the same in Canada, a lot of times, as much as we don't want to admit this, the master's degree is sort of a check in the block sometimes. Like, I need this to move on, okay? Nobody cares what it is sometimes, but I need this to move on. However, if we're going to do this, we may as well make it valuable. So we all know that we can learn, quote, archaeology, the history of an area, whatever we're going to, especially a country the size of Canada. If you've got people spread all over the place, you're not going to be teaching them about, archaeology of a specific area, but you are teaching them, like you said, research design, how to do that research, which is valuable if you're gonna move up in the world, get this degree, and then move on to the next step. You're going to need to know how to do that. But also, obviously one of the other really big things that, in my experience, people just have a massive lack of knowledge in, and it really hurts them when they start moving up, is a lot of that business sense. So I'm wondering how in depth is the business focus on this? Because I know Chris Dorr, who is, knows a lot about this stuff, is teaching one of the courses. But when it comes down to not necessarily running a business, because that's almost an entire other curriculum right there in and of itself, but project management, even getting into budgets and all that stuff that you could show up with a shiny master's degree and say, well, I know all these things now, but if you screw up a $500,000 project, you will be fired. So how do you guys tackle the business stuff? What do people learn? What can they expect to learn as far as getting into that side of CRM?
This is Chris Dorr's baby. He's uniquely qualified because he's got, a PhD in anthro as well as an MBA. Mm-hmm. And has been kind of chomping at the bit for the last few years to put together this type of curriculum and deliver it for students that have enough background in, CRM and the business end of it to be able to, have the uptake, to have enough to be able to receive and put that type of information and training to work. And, the evaluations on the course were very, very strong, especially after it was done, because the students were confronted mm-hmm. by the lack of preparation for business training when they started into Chris Dorr's course, our business management course.
Yeah.
And so it took a lot of additional work and kind of skills development and, reacquainting themselves with a calculator and, variety of other different activities like trying to figure out how to use a spreadsheet and, these kinds of skills that are, standard operating procedures in management and business, but not necessarily deeply situated or common in CRM. Mm-hmm. So Chris's idea is basically, in putting the course together, is to deliver a miniature version of an MBA using archaeological data and information. And so you're working through the case studies that he provides from the CRM world and applying business principles and business and analytic tools that come out of management. Mm-hmm. And so students reported, as I said, favorably after it was done, but it was a struggle on the way through it. There's no doubt about it. And in our curriculum review that I mentioned a few minutes ago, that's something that came out and that we had some ideas about how to streamline and to sort of reduce some of the load associated with that, some of the stress.
Well, that's good, because even if somebody only takes in half of the information that they learn in that school, in that course, they're going to be way ahead of other people. Because I know everybody's got this example, but I moved up before. I've tried to move up before before I owned my own company and decided to just figure all this out the hard way. But that's not the kind of thing that business is not the kind of thing CRM companies are A, willing to teach in most cases, and B, even if they were, have time to teach, because by the time you're in the next phase of a project, whether it's report writing or whatever, everybody else is on to the next project. And then when you're done with that, it's on to the next thing, and it's just piling up. So it's good to have a course like this. And like I said, if they only absorb even half of it, they'll be way ahead of their peers that didn't have something like this. So that's good.
Yeah, we couldn't rationalize a professional program in HRM or CRM archaeology that didn't include business.
Right.
The two can't operate independently. They have to be integrated with one another and with, deep knowledge of law and policy and ethics and practice. Like if you're not attending to all four dimensions more or less simultaneously, then you're looking for trouble.
Absolutely. All right. So we got one more segment to go. Before that, we're going to take a short break. So we'll be back in 30 seconds to wrap up this discussion. This episode of the CRM Archaeology Podcast is made possible by Codify Incorporated. Codify is a California benefit corporation that can help you with your digital archaeological needs. Visit codify.com today to find out how Codify can help you go paperless in 2017. That's www.codify.com. Now back to the show. All right, we're back, and we've got some questions to wrap up this discussion. But first, I wrote something down, a note. when you were talking, John, about how you guys had your meeting just recently to discuss the curriculum and what's going on. And just as we were talking through this and talking about essentials, I was thinking about something that possibly just needs to be taught in grad school or as a college course, because it seems obvious that technology, as it influences our lives more and more, it seems like this is just kind of a ubiquitous thing. But I was thinking, man, this almost needs to be taught at the management level in grad school, because I've talked to, at this point, probably hundreds of company owners and principal investigators and project managers, at whether it was at conferences or directly on the on a call or something like that, trying to talk to them about how to take them digital in 2017, whether it was with Codify or through DigTech, through my own efforts. And I'll tell you what, there's people always focus on archaeology. People always focus on even business when they're at that level, but they don't focus on really efficiency and working within those budgets and how to better work within those budgets. And really the only way to do that in this day and age is to introduce the right technology at the right time and to make all that work. So, well, I don't know if you guys are really discussing not just tablets, but other things, to get people familiar with this stuff that might not be, but to let them know this is now a part of business in archaeology. If you're not doing this for your business, you're actually not going to be competitive here within a very short period of time if you're not using the right technologies at the right time to maximize your budget and how far that goes. So maybe there's no question here, but maybe it's just a suggestion that get included if it's not, as at least a topic for a week in maybe Chris's business class or something like that. Bring in a special guest to say, here's all the things you need to know about the technology of the day and where that's going, so you don't look like an idiot when somebody calls you and says, here's how I can save you money, and you turn it down because you think the initial outlay is too expensive, but you can't see the fact that you'll save $100,000 in the next 3 months. So I had to throw that in as my technological 2 cents.
No, it's a brilliant comment, and I think one of the beauties of these online and distance learning environments is you can add on these kinds of modules, and you can set them up and see how widely they get subscribed to.
Yeah.
We'd love to work with you to come up with a module, and it can either be plugged in and integrated with the business management course, or it could be a dimension of this extended case study project that we want to use as the thread or integrating feature of the coursework going down the line. I think we'd have to do that.
Yeah.
To be, as you say, to be responsible.
Absolutely. And Bill and I were actually talking about that at the beginning of the call before we brought you guys in. One of the specific things that he was mentioning was really kind of about mapping and how important it is for people to understand how to draw a map on paper for an archaeological site, and which is an interesting comment because I fully agree with that. I wrote a book a few years ago, and one of the chapters in there is how to do a compass and paste map on paper, because I think it helps you make better GPS maps, whether you're using a Trimble or whatever, with shapes, lines, and polylines. If you don't understand really how to do that conceptually, and I think paper is one of the better ways, or at least hand drawing is one of the better ways than just doing those features on a GIS device, then that really helps you in the future. But you don't just need paper to do that, and that's where the disconnect comes in with a lot of people. I can draw a fantastic compass and paste map with little trees and rocks and all kinds of stuff on my tablet just as easy as I can on paper. In fact, easier, because I can move lines rather than erase them. I can change them, I can change their thickness, I can change their color, and I can do all that in seconds if you know the technology, which is the key. Too many people don't understand it, and it's just... I don't want to turn this into an episode of the Archaeotech podcast, but it's just a real sticking point with me that people automatically assume that something can't be done on a tablet. Apple's own ad campaign years ago, is there an app for that, is really the thing that sticks in my head. How can I make what I'm doing more efficient? And I might say, is there an app for that in my head when I'm trying to think of a task? But really, I'm trying to think, is there a better way to do this? Sometimes it's some piece of technology, and sometimes it's not. It's just, but is there a better way to do this? Am I doing whatever task I'm doing in the most efficient way? And I think that's a business skill and a management skill that's not often emphasized in any program enough. We try to give them the tools, but it's like giving somebody an empty toolbox and saying, go to town. It's like you need to show them how to use those things and then, put it in there. So
looking at it from the academic perspective, one of the things that you hear, and is true from my perspective, like this is my opinion as well, is that the technology, at least up until about now, has been so fast moving
Mm-hmm.
that it's been hard to know what to teach, for fear that whatever you lay down there as being is going to be eclipsed by technological advancement almost before the students get a chance to use it. And so, we have to, as I'm a member of an aging professoriate, right? We have to look to younger folks, yourself and the students in the programs included, in order to tell us
Mm-hmm.
what's going on and what is actually a solvent and sustainable platform for doing things like mapping that's going to be able to be carried forward and won't be lost in the sands of digital reinvention and innovation.
Yeah, and that's it's interesting that you're saying that too, because it's something I've been really thinking about as kind of a direction I could move with my company, because I'm not so interested in being just another CRM firm on the planet. There's plenty of those, but I'm interested in helping people in ways that I know best how to help them. And like for example, you said, if you're a business manager at a company, whether you're a project manager or whatever, really more likely if you're an owner, which these people get master's degrees and then they start looking at business ownership, which is fine, but they have to understand everything that goes with it. You're probably not going to do your own taxes. You're going to get a professional to do that. So in this day and age, it almost makes sense that you probably don't even want to do your own technological consulting, because you have to worry about getting contracts and finishing projects and doing things like that and managing your people and keeping your business alive. And if you had a technological advisor that could just keep you abreast of the latest things, the latest changes, and the latest things going on, because it is moving super fast, and you want somebody in that space that can help you help cut through the BS and say, listen, I've looked at this, it's crap. I've looked at this, it's good. Try this out, something like that. I've been considering that as a direction to go. But again, we need the education for people to say, you actually need to focus on these things, because it's really important to sustain your business if you're gonna survive in this economy. All the big companies already know this answer. So as all the big, massive engineering firms start taking over CRM projects and other smaller CRM companies, they're already doing these things. And the smaller guys, if they're not, they'll die or they'll be purchased, which maybe that's a good thing for them. So acquisition's never that bad, depending on how much the price was. But it's just it's a big thing. But I'll get off my technology soapbox, and we could talk about that offline.
I'll just say one other comment that I'd like to make about that is that I think one of the hallmarks of a real professional is knowing all the stuff that you don't know.
Yeah.
And one of the things that our program does is it shows, like, that's a big world of CRM out there that you might not really understand if you just been working, as I did for a lot of years in Arizona. And, when you put your head up and you start reading about international, directions in law and policy, about what's going on with, corporate governments and policy making on the international level, with what's going on at the cutting edge of ethical and practical considerations, all these things can be real eye openers for the fact that there's lots of different ways to solve common problems in CRM archaeology.
Yeah, and as we know, one of the hallmarks of leadership in business is knowing your strengths, but more importantly, knowing your weaknesses and relying on the people around you and experts to fill in those gaps. I mean, we all call in lithics experts, pottery experts, experts for different things. Why not call in technology experts and other things like that? So, anyway, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a great show. Actually, I'm learning a lot. One of the things that I do want to say, though, the master's right now is the professional end game, and it's the professional degree that it can get you a career in cultural resources, but that's the way things are now. What I see, there's a strong trajectory towards a lot of people getting PhDs, or the people who are getting PhDs not going on to tenure track jobs, and they're finding work in cultural resources. So with this has been a multi-year awareness that I've come across, that a BA is not enough to keep food on the table as a cultural resource management professional, you have to go on for the master's, and that's why this program exists, because it prepares people for working in the CRM world. But 20 years from now, it seems like a lot of people with PhDs with all the skills that a master's used to have, and they're going to be the more desirable one, especially as you talk about the internationalization of cultural resources. A lot of these grants under the World Bank and the IMF, they need someone with a PhD, and they're not going to let the project be managed by anyone with less. So with degree inflation, on the rise, do you see where this program will actually join with the PhD in anthropology, or where similar courses like this will be, PhD courses that archaeologists will have to take at other universities? So are you going to add what you've got going for your master's here to the PhD program there at Simon Fraser?
No plans are afoot to do that. I think your points are well taken, Bill. I certainly see the degree inflation that you reference rippling through the field, both academic and CRM. We have a couple of PhD students at SFU and a couple more being recruited right out of the CRM world that want to work on CRM projects in their PhD. And I don't just mean import a bunch of data to do research into prehistory. I mean CRM projects like prickly issues in the professionalization of the field, in business in the field, in the institutional dynamics, the ways that law and policy are influencing bottom lines and influencing the quality of the research. That kind of stuff is what some of the students in the SFU PhD program are looking at. On the other hand, at least for me, a PhD in the pure pursuit of knowledge and the joys and rewards that come from that. And so to me, it's just not going to be a professional degree no matter what. Whereas we can still trick our master's program into being a professional program as long as we hold to the thesis requirements and we toe those lines for making sure that we're producing high quality students at a master's level. I'm not sure I see that going on at the PhD level. So it'd be interesting to explore the possibility, though, of a professional PhD program. There is one that's in the planning stages at SFU, looking at the broader area of environmental heritage and, like an international degree in community and environmental sustainability that was pretty closely focused on professional preparation. And so they're trying to come up with a hybrid. We haven't gotten there yet. And I'm not aware of anybody else having tried it.
Well, I don't know if the PhD will ever go vocational, kind of like along the lines of what we're talking about with the master's. But what I think might end up happening is advisors and others will recommend that their PhDs take your courses because, they're going to get the information that they need to, move on to the next level. That's kind of what I'm talking about, where the course load gets kind of mixed, where it's not just pure research. There's more of these technical project-oriented courses. I believe in the past, my advisor told me that when she did her PhD and her master's, there were more courses that were oriented that way, methods and problems in archaeology. We're talking back in the 80s. And that kind of was the way back in the processional archaeology day that you were doing these more practice-oriented courses. And they had to take those as part of their PhD curriculum. So that's what I mean. Having a program that's so closely related there at Simon Fraser, it behooves any advisor not to recommend taking at least some of these courses, because they're going to learn the stuff that they're going to need later on, whether they become tenure track or just work as a PI at a company somewhere.
And here's where I step in to protect the investment and the commitment that our students have made. Because what we've told them and what I'm towing the line on and holding the line on is nobody else has access to these courses except you. You guys have joined the program. You've come in the front door. We're not opening up, the business management course or the research design and methods course. We know it's better than what is available in lots of other venues. Like SFU's graduate courses are excellent also. For their traditional programs, but there's no overlap for what the students can take out of the HRM. So you can't be a graduate student at SFU or any other place on the planet and have access to our 4 courses in our HRM master's program.
Well, that's cool. That keeps it, in-house. Actually, that's really great. It's the program. Otherwise, there's no just mixing it with a whole bunch of other stuff. And I think that helps you keeping people timely because they're in the program and they're going to finish the program and then maybe move on to something else. That's kind of one of the distractions that can happen, especially with a PhD, but also with the master's that has, is more open-ended. It's difficult for students to navigate straight from one end to the other when they can take other things or they get sidetracked or their project changes. So that's probably another strength of the program, that it's streamlined and that you start at one end and you finish at the other.
Yeah, we've been trying to tell everybody that you have high completion confidence in this program. You can see everything that you need to do. One of the things that we've done in order to limit the uncertainties associated with the master's thesis is to actually create a rubric for it. And so it's outlined in excruciating detail what every section of every chapter needs to contain in order for it to be presented for evaluation by your supervisor, by your faculty, mentor. And so we've done that, and we're continuing to try to identify things that are going to add uncertainty and indecision about the program and how to get through it. And we're going to eliminate those one by one.
Sounds excellent. I got one more question before he tells us about the program.
Mm-hmm.
So most students aren't in your program. Where can they get some content or some information that can help them? I did at the University of Idaho, and they're in their master's and they're starting to hear this podcast. Where would you direct them to get some of the information? Are there books, YouTube videos, websites? Where do you guys direct students to get course material that maybe is not proprietary, not part of the actual courses?
Yeah, we've actually set up a really elaborate bibliography and list of online and open access, as well as some of them that aren't open access resources in the 4 dimensions of CRM. So it's organized by, law and policy, ethics and practice, business management, and research design and methods. And that's available through our HRM program website and also through the SFU library. And so,
awesome.
And there's a few other links off of the place, because we felt like that was our responsibility also, as long as we're developing these things in order to these course assets. Like, what are these course assets actually grounded in, and how can this be turned into a publicly beneficial, value-added thing for the entire discipline and for anybody else that's interested in the practicalities and the professionalism of CRM.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've pretty much run out of time, but we have to talk about real quick, John. Tell us about how people apply to this program and when they can apply, and anything else they need to know about that process.
Yeah. So once again, if you've got a bachelor's degree and you want a master's degree and you've got some experience doing CRM archaeology or archaeology in general, it doesn't necessarily have to be specific. CRM archaeology. It could be working in a museum, working with collections, any kind of professional experience that you've got in archaeology or related fields, and you're ready to make a commitment to getting a master's degree, or you just really like the sound of these courses and you want a certificate, a coursework only certificate. You could also, I guess, have a PhD, but have recognized that you need that professional and practical training in CRM in order to get a job. Mm-hmm. So you want the certificate, the coursework only certificate. Then you go to our SFU HRM archaeology website, and there's a big red button that says apply. We want to see your CV, and we want to see a statement of what your thesis intentions are. And we want to have a couple of letters from people who know you and your work, and are willing to gush a little bit about the high potential that you've got in order to advance in the field.
Nice.
And with that, we take it under advisement, and we'll review the application and get back to you directly. You can also contact me if you've got any question. And, if you do Welch Archaeology, I come up, I think, the first or the second hit on Google. But if not, you can go through the SFU website and find me without any trouble. We still have slots open for the fall 2017 cohort. One of the other great things about SFU is it's made up of people, not rules. And so we knew that we could extend the application deadline, and we've done that. And so we'll be looking at applications into the early part of August of this summer, 2017. And probably in future years, we'll keep it open as well. Again, we're looking for junior professional colleagues, not folks that are following the typical academic route. So we're bending and breaking rules wherever we need to in order to get that done.
Nice.
John, I looked on the website real quick, and it said tuition's only $5,500 a year, and it's the same whether you're Canadian or international student?
It's $5,500 a term.
What is a term?
The tuition, the entire tuition for the master's program is $26,000, all in.
So that means we are going to take this program then now.
Yeah.
That means we're going to be your students next.
Nice.
Bring it. We'd welcome people, especially if you're got American money coming in, because the U.S. Canadian differential is, 25% discount currently, basically. So American students are well advised to consider this program along with others that might suit their needs.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the certificate, if you want the coursework only certificate, then it's less expensive. Then I think it's about $21,000 all in.
Okay.
Less.
Wow.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, John. This has been really good. I like this program. I like the sounds of it. I think you guys are on the right track. And I think it would be fantastic once you kind of get through this a little bit, and we have some students coming out of this that can maybe come back on the show and talk about their experiences at SFU and what they liked about it, and maybe even some room for improvement, because every program has room for improvement, as you guys evolve this and move on. So anyway, thanks a lot. Go ahead.
No, thank you very much. I actually thought about trying to get a student to come on with us, but you know what? They're all busy, which is a good thing. So.
It's a good thing. Nice. We have links to a lot of the stuff that we talked about in the show notes. I'll look up some of this other stuff that we mentioned and make sure those links are in the show notes. So you can go to arcpodnet.com/CRM Arc Podcast /114 for this episode specifically. If you're listening to this in the first couple of weeks of July, you can just go to arcpodnet.com and click on the CRM Arc Podcast. It'll be the latest episode, because this is going up on July 5th as you're listening to it. So anyway, you have, if you're listening to it on that day, you've got less than a month, really, to get in your application. So check that out. Get that 25% American discount if you're in the U.S., and let's do it. So thanks a lot, John.
Thanks you.
That's it for another episode of the CRM Archaeology Podcast. Links to some of the items mentioned on the show are in the show notes for this podcast, which can be found at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com /CRM Arc Podcast. If you like the show and want to comment, please do. You can leave comments about this or any other episode on the website or on the iTunes page for the episode. You can also email me at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com or use the contact form on the podcast webpage. If you'd like us to answer a question on a future episode, email us. Use the contact form on the website or tweet your questions with the hashtag CRMArcPodcast, or you can tag @ArcPodNet in your tweet. Please share the link to the show wherever you saw it. If you share CRM archaeology-related items on Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else for that matter, be sure to use the hashtag CRMArc so the community can see and comment. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, you can do so on iTunes or on Stitcher Radio. You can also type the name of the podcast into your favorite podcasting app and subscribe that way. Don't forget to go over to iTunes and leave a review of the show. It helps us get noticed so more people can find our podcast and benefit from the content. Also, send us show suggestions and interview suggestions. We want this to be a resource for field technicians everywhere, and we want to know what you want to know about. Also, please consider donating to the Archaeology Podcast Network. Your donations help fund our bandwidth and contribute to our editing costs. Thanks to everyone for joining me this week. Thanks also to the listeners for tuning in, and we'll see you in the field. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
This show is produced by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Thanks again for listening to this episode and for supporting the Archaeology Podcast Network. If you want these shows to keep going, consider becoming a member for just $7.99 US a month. That's cheaper than a venti quad eggnog latte. Go to arcpodnet.com/members for more info.